Hi there. I'm really excited to be here today. I've been speaking on Agile2 for a while now, and I'm really excited for this opportunity to bring it to the DC DevOps community. So today I'm going to focus on what Agile2 actually is, why we came up with it, and how it's useful for DevOps. So Agile is great, and I love it. I'm an Agile coach, but it has problems. One of them is that people think that Agile is Scrum and Scrum is Agile. And Scrum is generally understood to be a process, not a philosophy. It has clear roles and duties for each role. People say to me, I need you to show me how to do the Agile process. Or, Lisa, can you just teach us how Agile works and leave out the theory? And this really kind of misses the point. A lot of people know about this, and Chris Lennon wrote this article for Medium back in July asking if Scrum is over. So I met a senior DevOps engineer recently who told me that he's never met an Agile coach who really did any good. He said some of them are nice people and I really like talking to them, but they don't really help much. So something is clearly wrong. And when looking to hire, organizations aren't always sure that they need both DevOps people and Agile people. And whether you blame it on Agile or how people use Agile or what people think about Agile, it's not really working the way that we want it to. So if you ask the question, has Agile failed? You'll get different answers from different people. Generally, those with a vested interest or those with less experience tend to think that Agile's great and it's really useful. But developers and other tech team members like UX designers and quality engineers, people who have been harmed by rigid Agile frameworks, they will tell you privately that they hate it. The general response in the Agile community is to say that the people who don't like Agile just don't really understand it, or they will point out that the culture isn't ready for Agile. And while these may be true, they're really not that useful. And they trigger defensiveness because they imply that if you've tried Agile and it's not working for you, it's your fault, right? And so this defensiveness is among the very people that the Agilists are trying to change and to support. So it doesn't really work to go to this reason for Agile not being effective. Now, more experienced Agile coaches have a more nuanced perspective. They know just how hard it is, and they know that Agile is not the answer to everything. A mature perspective brings in other fields like organizational development, professional change management, cognitive science, instructional design, and behavioral psychology. A mature agilist focuses on business agility. They know that the goal is not to be agile, the goal is to get good business outcomes. So, with all this negativity around Agile, let's not forget that Agile brought about many useful changes in how software was being developed 20 years ago. For example, Agile got people to realize that waterfall style projects were no good, and that it really isn't possible to design all the requirements up front and still get a good outcome. Agile argued for small teams that can work quickly rather than large teams. And they built quality in from the beginning by testing early for both bugs and integration issues. But later on, ideas in the Agile community took hold and became entrenched that were not really that helpful. And they were not really actually all that Agile either. For example, the assumption that all teams should be self-organizing. Well, what if the team isn't ready for that? What if the team lacks good leadership? Or the sidelining of written communication in favor of face-to-face conversations? This can be really problematic, for example, when major technical decisions are not documented and shared widely, or tech stacks aren't described fully enough for newcomers to figure out how to work with them. And what about all the frameworks? One problem with them is that they are not necessarily aligned with the Agile Manifesto or even ideas that are prevalent in the Agile community. And so, in a way, some of them are not really Agile at all. Another problem with the frameworks is that they give people the impression that they are complete, that if you just create all the roles listed and give them specific responsibilities and tasks and follow the given process, you will be successful. The truth is that all the frameworks require tailoring. None are perfect for any and every situation and for every organization, just the way they are right out of the box. Yet people who are new to Agile assume that the frameworks are complete and they try to follow them carefully, and they're disappointed when they don't yield good results. Now, the Dark Manifesto makes fun of this by flipping the values around and making the entire thing rigid and extreme. And this came out 9 years ago in 2012. But until Agile2, the Agile community hadn't really addressed this problem head on. Another thing is that the Agile Manifesto left stuff out. There are all these areas of knowledge and expertise that were known even back in the 1990s. For example, business data. Data was really important back in 2001, and whole companies specialized in gathering and analyzing business data, but the manifesto doesn't mention it. Now, in fairness, the original manifesto did not claim to be the be-all or the end-all to ideas about software. It was the way it was interpreted and applied or misapplied that got the Agile community into trouble. Today, data is even more important than ever. It's arguably more important than code, and methodologies that claim to be Agile also say nothing about data, with one exception, feature-driven development. But I will ask you this: how many people have heard that the data their teams push to the data lake is unusable for machine learning? It's because no one is telling the teams that when they use Scrum, they also need to figure out modeling techniques or domain-driven design, and that maintaining enterprise data models is essential if you want to leverage your data as an asset for business intelligence. Now, for DevOps to work, as you know, you need to apply it to the entire value stream, not just to the dev teams. And this is where business agility comes in. It's essential for people in different parts of the value stream to be able to have meaningful conversations. And they can only do that if they understand a little bit about each other's domain. Not everyone can be an expert in everything, but people do need to understand each other's areas. And this is why one core Agile2 principle is that business people need to understand how their technology is built and delivered. DevOps was first conceived by Agilists. Now, though, DevOps feels like it's strictly a technical practice, with companies hiring DevOps experts and creating specialized DevOps teams. And DevOps, as it's practiced today, is more about workflow, lean techniques for software development, and testing and operations. And the challenge with Agile, which should be helping and supporting DevOps, these challenges end up holding DevOps back. The Agile community focuses on scaling Agile, which is great, using processes like Scrum or adapting Agile into models like SAFe. But DevOps also allows you to scale Agile. And so DevOps started to get traction all on its own, and in some cases, bypassing Agile. I don't really think DevOps is ready to replace Agile. You know, the original idea of DevOps was people-oriented to combine development and operations. And Nicole Forsgren in her book Accelerate shows that adopting DevOps practices is correlated with higher morale and good leadership. The reality of DevOps is different than its original articulation. And I don't think DevOps can do completely without Agile for a couple of reasons. While DevOps provides many of the missing technical pieces and elements of Agile, the other reason it can't replace Agile is that DevOps does not include theories of human behavior, and Agile2 does. It focuses on the culture of the organization. How are its leaders? How are people expected to behave? Now, before I dive into explaining some of the Agile2 values and principles, let me make a clear distinction between classic Agile as it's practiced in general in the Agile community and Agile2. In classic Agile, everything's about the team. In Agile2, the focus is on the product and on the ecosystem of the organization, especially the individuals that make up the ecosystem. Classic Agile pushes for self-organized autonomous teams. Agile2 says that first we have to make sure we have the right kinds of leadership. We've all probably seen examples of the rigidity that has set into the Agile community around practices and methods. Agile2 is much more balanced and pays more attention to unique circumstances. Classic Agile doesn't really address tech straight on. Instead, it focuses on process and methods. And Agile2 is firmly rooted in DevOps. And finally, many equate Agile with Scrum, as I said before. With Agile2, the focus is on making sure that the right things are getting done quickly. Now, the Agile2 value statements have a both and construction. And that's intentional to avoid the idea that one concept is good and the other concept is bad, or that we value one over the other. We intentionally chose ideas that are kind of opposites because Agile2 favors a balance between them. So for example, the first one, thoughtfulness and prescription. This means, think about the context. Understand things before choosing to act. It's okay to help inexperienced people get going by being prescriptive. They don't need to know and understand everything at first in order to get started, but they will be supported best with thoughtful guidance. Outcomes and outputs. We constantly hear that it's all about good business outcomes or other kinds of desired outcomes. And it is. But you don't get outcomes without output. So both matter. It's not wrong to measure outputs, so long as you know that those are the outputs that are leading to the outcomes you want. In the Agile space, it's all about teams. But with Agile2, individuals are also important. That's why we say individuals and teams. After all, teams are made up of individual humans. What people need, their working style, their communication preferences, their growth, their career development, these are all really important. And team spirit matters too. Neither is more important than the other. Business understanding and technical understanding. To succeed today, technology people need to understand the business in order to do good work. And business leaders need to learn about the technology if they hope to get the best from their tech people and achieve their business goals. Individual empowerment and good leadership. We hear a lot about autonomous teams and self-organized teams, and these are really important ideas because people need to take chances and they need to try out their new ideas. They need to learn from their experiments and be innovative. At the same time, leadership is essential, and leaders need to be mindful of how much freedom their people can reasonably handle. Too much autonomy before a person or a team is ready for it can backfire very badly. Adaptability and planning. Things change so quickly these days that we're all forced to be adaptable, whether we like it or not. But that doesn't mean we should throw away our plans or stop planning. Planning is important because people need to think through what they intend to accomplish and how they will do it, and think about all the possibilities so they can prepare. It's really important to do the planning. And it's important to be adaptable when you're in the thick of it. You have to be capable of throwing away your plans and doing something different because the circumstances make that absolutely necessary. That doesn't mean that your planning was worthless. It helped you prepare, and actually, planning can help you to be more adaptable in the moment. Next, I'm going to talk about the Agile2 principles. Now, there's a lot of principles. There's 43 of them. But even so, Agile2 does not claim to be the last word. And it does not claim to be complete. It's not a framework. It's just a set of ideas, a set of guiding principles to help you think about what you're doing. So we've gathered these 43 principles into 8 different categories. We're going to take a look at these category by category. And there's several principles in each category. So in some cases, I've highlighted in yellow the ones that I want to focus on today. They're all really important, and they're listed here. And you're going to get a copy of these slides so you can go back and take a look at them later if you'd like. Now, product design is really important, and a focus on this is often missing as a part of the discussion during an Agile transformation. The one in yellow, I think, is really super important. Everyone working on things that impact customers should feel connected to those customers. They need to be aware of their pain if things don't turn out well. And this attitude needs to be baked right into the DNA of the organizations, because it really is the lifeblood of the reason for the organization to exist at all. And DevOps is about being accountable. It's about working collaboratively to keep the pipeline green, to deploy quickly and seamlessly with minimal disruption to the end user. So really, I think DevOps is at its essence about making sure that our customers are happy and that we do feel accountable for errors and mistakes, and we try to prevent them as much as we can. And DevOps is a great way to do that. Now, data is sometimes an afterthought, and it's not really directly addressed by most of the Agile frameworks or methods. And Agile2 thinks that gathering good data is essential to success. And while perhaps some people think that DevOps and data are two totally separate things, it's wise for DevOps practitioners to be aware of the information model that the organization uses and to ensure that it works well and achieves its goals. Now, Agile2 has a lot of principles on leadership. This is one of the biggest areas that we focus on. And the most important of these to me is that the leadership model that an organization has will determine everything else that happens in the organization. It can be no other way. Leaders are role models. People will imitate their behavior. Leaders are like parents. They must display the values and behavior they ask of others. They can't be in a position of saying, do as I say, not as I do, because it won't work. People are smart. They see through this really quickly, and they imitate what they see, and they ignore what they hear. And Nicole Forsgren writes that DevOps is correlated with good leadership, as I said earlier, and I would argue that on the flip side, poor leadership will impede DevOps. So even if you think DevOps is mainly a technical domain, I think it's important for you to also consider what is going on regarding the leadership model that you have in your organization and the leadership that is available to your teams. Intentional, thoughtful leadership is really important. For example, teams need direction. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a team of individual contributors or a management team. A team is a team, and they all need leadership. And this is what we mean when we say that leadership models scale. Now, before I go further, I would like to make a crucial point. There is no one perfect form of leadership. An organization really needs many different kinds of leadership. So Agile2 suggests that a team often needs more than one leader, each of a different kind. And Agile2 does not claim to be the experts on leadership. There's a whole discipline with PhDs who teach it and explain everything about it. Agile2 just emphasizes how important intentional leadership is to success. Agile2 tries to bring leadership back into a central role in Agile. Now, here's a bunch of different kinds of leadership. These are very different leadership traits, and you seldom see them in the same person, but they're all needed at different times and in different circumstances. And they do not need to come from a person with positional authority or an official role. It can come from anyone on the team. Now, the Agile community shares a collective view that leaders will emerge. And the question is, do the leaders who emerge have the skills or leadership qualities that are needed? The evidence from leadership research shows that while leaders do emerge when people are left to their own devices, those leaders don't necessarily have the right traits. They might be very strong-willed. They might be the people who are the most extroverted, but they may not serve the group in its ultimate purpose. Agile2 supports the concept of emergent leadership and the idea of intentional leadership approaches to ensure that all the teams have all the kinds of leadership that they need. Now, one of Agile2's principles is that good leaders are open. And here we're talking about those with positional authority. That means that leaders need to listen before they give orders. Just because they have authority doesn't mean they should use it, right? In fact, good leaders will only use their authority sparingly. And people need to have agency over how they do their work so that they can unleash their creativity. But when issues arise that transcend the team, a good leader knows how to deal with them. A good leader will take into account issues that are outside the team along with issues that are internal to the team. Okay, frameworks. We talked a little bit about this earlier. The core idea of Agile2 regarding frameworks is that they should all be tailored for the situation. Implementing frameworks without doing this is much less likely to yield good results. Agile2 ideas around workflow align closely with Lean. Things that slow us down do us great harm. We need to be alert at all times for causes for delay and address them. And after all, isn't this really the heart of DevOps? To be able to release software regularly and smoothly? DevOps, when done effectively, can really speed things up in a good way. Okay, this is one of my favorites, technical and business fluency. Agile2 emphasizes that all organizations these days have a technical element, and this tech is central to the organization's success. Business leaders need to understand how their technical products and services are built and delivered in order for the organization to be successful. Now, this may seem self-evident and obvious to you, but sometimes business leaders outsource managing their tech, while leaders continue to make decisions and devise strategies that completely contradict the things needed for the tech to be successful. I've heard from DevOps engineers who get frustrated because a company hires them to install DevOps and then doesn't want to change anything they're currently doing. They just want the engineer to somehow magically install DevOps and make everything go fast. Business leaders who take the time to get a sense of what DevOps really means are far more likely to be open to the changes necessary for it to work well. In addition, technical leaders need to understand the business. Often, technical leaders are considered by the organization to not really need to know too much about the business because their job is taking care of the tech. And Agile2 says that actually technical leaders really do need to understand what's going on with the business, and especially the leaders at a fairly deep level so that they can make the right technical decisions that take into account the business trade-offs and the impacts of the decisions that they're making. So many of the Agile2 ideas around transformation are common sense. That is, if you are an engineer, and especially if you're an expert in DevOps. Yet they bear repeating and keeping in mind because it's so easy to lose sight of the conditions needed for bringing about change in the organization. For example, a transformation is really about lots of people in an organization being willing to learn. This doesn't happen through a step-by-step process change. As a training expert, I can tell you it doesn't happen through training alone. It's about a deeper change in the heart, where people really learn to see things differently and be open to new ideas. And this, in turn, requires things like running small experiments to see how things turn out, or ensuring that the top level of leadership is on board with the changes, and that when people do run these small experiments, because a lot of them won't work out and they fail, but they're seen as learning opportunities. They're seen as ways to advance the organization and not as failures. Finally, Agile2 focuses on people as individuals. The biggest complaint I hear is that there are too many meetings. People associate Agile with having way too many meetings. And I've even heard people say that they have to work nights and weekends just to get their real work done because their days are full of meetings. This is crazy. People require sufficient focus time so that they can actually get their work done. The Agile2 principles around people also focus more on the individual than the team. We do value the team and we value team output, but at the end of the day, teams are made up of individuals, and those people need to be supported fully in order for the team to be effective. I'd like to end by making the case for Agile2 from the perspective of a DevOps practitioner. Many of you may have concluded that Agile is irrelevant for the work that you do. And like my friend I mentioned before, you don't have much use for Agile coaches and Agilists in general. But what about the culture problem? How are you going to tackle that? I hear from my DevOps practitioner friends that the biggest impediment to successful DevOps is culture. And culture can't be fixed with a technical solution. It needs people who know about psychology and theories of organizational development and change management and how to assess culture, how to identify what's actually going on so that you can come up with a plan for addressing the cultural impediments that are preventing you from having success. And this is why DevOps needs Agile2. Because Agile2 can help you to overcome the cultural obstacles in the way of your success. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Agile2. I'm going to share some resources if you want to learn more. A group of us wrote a book called Agile2, The Next Iteration of Agile, which is available on Amazon. You can also read all about the values and principles of Agile2 on the agile2.net website. There were 15 people involved in this effort over a period of 8 months. And we were from all over the world, and we had lots of conversations and debates about all of these different ideas to come up with the final set of values and principles. And we all stand behind all the values and principles. There's also an Agile2 group on LinkedIn, and it talks about all of these ideas. And it's you do need to request to join the group, but we accept everyone who requests to join. And people there debate different ideas related to Agile2, how they can use Agile2 in their organizations, what does it actually mean? And it's a really wonderful group of individuals. So I encourage you to consider joining that if you want to learn more. Also, I'd love it if you'd stay in touch. Here's my email. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. Although I don't have very many Twitter followers, I do love chatting with people. So reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to answer your questions and continue the conversation. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.